These are all the Mobile Legends terms, starting from the popular ones, the ones known by epic players, and the ones only Immortal players use. But you won't find this anywhere else, because we'll start from the draft phase and gradually move into the late game. So let's start with an easy one. What's the difference between a burst hero and a DPS hero? Burst damage is damage that comes out as much as possible, as fast as possible. Meanwhile, DPS is the opposite. It stands for damage per second, which means damage that comes out bit by bit over time. Strangely, while making this video, DPS heroes are actually more meta than burst heroes. But what does meta even mean? Meta stands for most effective tactic available. So meta heroes are very strong, and naturally, off-meta heroes are considered very weak. That's why in any meta, very strong heroes must be picked or banned. Hence the term pick or ban heroes. Talking about heroes, do you know the difference between jungler, core, and hyper? A jungler is a role that uses retribution and farms in the jungle. Meanwhile, the core is your team's main damage dealer, but hyper is a strategy where every resource is given to one person so they can carry the team. While we're at it, you need to know about hero types. Poke heroes are good at dealing small amounts of damage to the enemy, unlike sustained heroes who are good at surviving thanks to their healing or shields. But do you know what heal and anti-heal actually do? Heal means restoring your health bar, while anti-heal reduces the enemy's healing. It's different from a shield, which is temporary protection that absorbs damage. Tanky heroes are those with high health or defense, so sustained heroes survive using their heal and shield, while tanky heroes survive with their health and defense. Usually, tanky heroes are also initiators, heroes that start fights with their skills, like Beleric, Atlas, and Tigreal with their ultimates. Crowd control is an effect that hinders the enemy's movement. Unfortunately, crowd control doesn't affect heroes who are immune. But do you know the difference between immune and untargetable? Immune means you're unaffected by things like damage or crowd control, so you can still be attacked. The attack is just useless. This is great for tanks. It's different from untargetable, which makes enemies unable to attack you, so you can't absorb their damage. This effect is great for squishy heroes like assassins and marksmen. Do you know the difference between on-hit and critical heroes? On-hit is an effect that enhances your basic attacks, like Swift Crossbow's passive, which adds extra damage to every basic attack, so on-hit heroes usually rely on attack speed. Critical, on the other hand, is a damage boost to your basic attacks that occurs based on chance. Here's a simple breakdown. Critical damage is the bonus multiplier. 100% critical damage means your damage is doubled, while critical chance is the likelihood that the hit will be critical. A 50% critical chance means 1 out of every 2 attacks will crit. But keep in mind, criticals are useless if you don't scale correctly. Scale is how much your hero gets stronger based on a particular stat. For example, the higher Granger's physical attack, the more his damage will increase. So Granger scales with physical attack. But do you know the other damage types? Physical attack deals physical damage, which appears in red. Magic power deals magic damage, which appears in blue. Meanwhile, adaptive damage deals physical damage if your physical attack is higher than your magic power and vice versa. But the most powerful damage is true damage, which penetrates all defensive stats. It appears in white. Fortunately, those damage types have their own counters. Do you know what's the difference between damage reduction and physical attack reduction? If you have damage reduction, you'll receive less damage. If the enemy is given physical attack reduction, they will deal less physical damage. If you like this term so far, you'll love what's coming next. But first, we have to start with banning terms. Do you know the difference between blind ban and draft ban? Blind ban is when both teams ban heroes at the same time, so we don't know what the enemy will ban. It's different from a draft ban, where the bans alternate between teams. Blind bans are used in public matches draft bans are used in professional matches. The first 3 bans are called top bans, while the last 2 are called bottom bans. A respect ban is when a hero is banned not because it's strong, but because the enemy is exceptionally good at using it, like Oh My Venus' Estes or Super Marcos Brody. When playing, you're not just banning, right? You also have to pick heroes. Draft pick means taking turns picking heroes with the enemy. We can see what the enemy is picking and we can't choose the same heroes. A flex pick is when you pick a flexible hero, one that can be played in more than one role or position. A blind pick is when you choose a hero for a lane without knowing the enemy matchup. The most important type of pick is the counter pick, which means choosing a specific hero that's very strong against an enemy hero. If you're unlucky, you might end up with the last pick. Luckily, you can request your team to swap pick orders. To do that, you need to show your win rate, which is how often you win calculated with this formula. Your win rate will be low if you encounter many trolls, because trolls are players who prevent you from winning, usually on purpose. If you encounter too many trolls, you'll go on a lose streak, which means losing multiple games in a row. The opposite of that is called a win streak. Have you ever drafted for marksman? Well, that game won't happen because it will be dodged. With that, you now understand draft terms. Let's continue to the early game. The early game is the first 5 minutes in the Land of Dawn, when plating still exists and siege minions still give extra gold and XP. The most important topic here is micro mechanics and macro skills. Micro mechanics are your knowledge of a particular hero, like their skills, matchups, power spikes, scalings, items, damage types, and hidden mechanics. Meanwhile, macro skills are skills that affect the game as a whole, like rotations, farming patterns, objectives, split pushing, team fights, and wave control. Have you seen this before? It's called plating, the golden layer on the tower. When attacked, it gives you a bit of gold. But plating isn't the only way to get gold. You can also farm jungle monsters or lane minions. Minions spawn every few seconds in a group. One group is called a wave. If you reach the minions before they get to the center, it's called cutting. But if they reach the center, you have 3 options: slow push, hard push, and freeze. Slow push is saving up minions to build a massive wave. You can do this by making sure you have just one more minion than the enemy. Hard push means clearing the enemy minions as quickly as possible, so your minions get shoved to the enemy turret. Freezing is when you keep the minions in place by making sure your minions are equal to the enemies. The one thing you must do when farming is denying, which means making the enemy lose on minions and gold, usually by zoning them out. Zoning is keeping the enemy from entering a specific area, whether it's the lane, the turtle pit, or the lord pit. When you're in lane, don't forget to last hit, which means dealing the final blow needed to get the minion. In lane, you're not only farming but also fighting the enemy. If you manage to kill them in a 1v1, you've just scored a solo kill. With that, your KDA will increase. KDA stands for Kill Death Assist, a ratio that shows how often you kill or assist compared to how often you die. Here is the formula. Be careful though, because you can get ganked. Ganking means going to another lane to help your team kill the enemy. The route you take is called pathing. If you want to survive enemy ganks, you need to play safe. The best way to do that is with lifesteal. But do you know the difference between lifesteal, spell vamp, and hybrid lifesteal? Lifesteal is a stat that heals you when you deal damage with basic attacks. Spell vamp heals you when you deal damage with skills, and hybrid lifesteal is the strongest because it heals you from any kind of damage. Be careful, you can still get dived, which means entering the enemy turret to secure a kill. To prevent that, your roamer should peel for you, which means guarding you from enemy attacks. If you play as a jungler, there are 3 things you need to know. The blue buff reduces your mana cost, energy cost, and cooldowns. The red buff gives extra true damage, and the turtle buff gives you a lot of gold and XP. With that, your team will reach their power spike faster. A power spike is when your hero is at their strongest. It can happen in the early game, mid game, or late game. But to capitalize on that power spike, you need to invade, which means raiding the enemy jungle to steal their camps. With that, you will snowball, which means winning from the early game and using that advantage to grow it even further. If you're snowballing, you need to be very careful because your bounty will be very high. Bounty is the extra gold the enemy gets when they kill someone who is way ahead. If they get a huge bounty, they can make a comeback, which means turning a losing situation into a winning one. But when you're playing certain heroes, you need to understand stacks. Stacks are accumulated effects or bonuses that increase with time or with actions, like Aldous' first skill, which gives 1 stack if used to last hit. The stacks make Aldo stronger. I know you've learned a lot, but there are still a few more important terms, like mid-game, which starts from the 5th minute until the Lord spawns. Usually we'll have clashes or wars, which are fights that involve more than 2 people. Some are in the front line and some in the back line. The best thing you can do in a clash is locking the enemy backline, which means focusing on one specific enemy. It's different from a flank, which means attacking from the side or the back when the enemy isn't ready. But the enemy can still kite, which means attacking while moving. If you want your flank to succeed, you should use conceal, an effect that makes your hero invisible. You can also use conceal to pick off the enemy, which means taking them out one by one. Be careful when attacking because the enemy can split push, which means pushing the farthest lane to pressure the map. That's different from a straight push, which means pushing one lane with the whole team. The opposite of that is called a 3-lane push, which means splitting up to push all lanes. But a 3-lane push is only viable if you have the Lord. If you think mid-game terms are useful, you haven't seen late-game terms. Late game starts after the Lord spawns. The Lord will evolve at minute 18. But do you know the difference between Lord minions and Super minions? Lord minions are enhanced minions after defeating the Lord. Super minions appear when you destroy the enemy's inhibitor. Lord minions are stronger than Super minions. This video took a long time to make. If you love this one, I'm sure you'll love this video too.